Welcome back, class. Today we are looking at part 2 of our quadratic formula video. The quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And just a reminder, you can sing this song to the Pop Goes the Weasel beat. So it goes like this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now I can't sing, but I went ahead and did it anyway so that you remember the formula. So in this you try problem, it says solve using the quadratic formula. Let's write out the formula. I'll go ahead and sing it again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, now use the formula. A is 1, b is negative 6, and c is negative 7. Take the values and plug them in. X equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4. A is 1, c is negative 7. All over 2 times 1. That's x equals, a negative times a negative is a positive, so positive 6 plus or minus the square root of 36, and negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 7 is 28. All over 2 times 1 is 2. Now let's simplify. X equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 28, 64, all over 2. So x equals 6 plus or minus the square root of 64. That's a perfect square, so that's 8 all over 2. Now class, let's split up our solutions. X equals 6 plus 8 over 2. And x equals 6 minus 8 over 2. 6 plus 8 is 14 over 2, and 14 over 2 is 7. 6 minus 8 is negative 2, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Now, since those are our solutions and these are whole numbers, let's check. Check when x equals 7. The equation is x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0. So that's 7 squared minus 6 times 7 minus 7 equals 0. 49, negative 6 times 7 is negative 42. Minus 7 equals 0. 49 minus 42 is 7, and 7 minus 7 does equal 0. So x equals 7 checks. Now let's check when x equals negative 1. When x equals negative 1, we have x squared minus 6x minus 7 equals 0. That's negative 1 squared minus 6 times negative 1 minus 7 equals 0. Negative 1 squared is 1. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6 minus 7 equals 0. 1 plus 6 is 7. 7 minus 7 is 0. So 0 equals 0, which means that negative 1 is a solution. Let's do another problem. We want to use the quadratic formula. We have 2x squared equals 8x minus 7. This isn't in standard form. Let's rewrite this problem so that it equals 0. So I'll go ahead and subtract the 8x to both sides. I want to try to keep my leading coefficient positive. The leading coefficient is the number that goes in front of x squared. So now we have 2x squared minus 8x equals negative 7. Remember, we can't combine 2x squared with the negative 8x because they're not like terms. So add 7 to both sides, which leaves us with 2x squared minus 8x plus 7 equals 0. Now we want to use the quadratic formula, so identify a, b, and c. A is 2, b is negative 8, c is 7. Let's use the formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 8 squared, minus 4, a is 2, c is 7, all over 2 times a, which is 2. So x equals a negative times a negative is a positive, positive 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared is 64, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, negative 8 times 7 is negative 56, all over 4. So that's x equals 8 plus or minus 64 minus 56 is 8 all over 4. Okay, the square root of 8 is not a perfect square. So we need to simplify the square root of 8. I'll go ahead and do the work in the corner. The square root of 8 is, well, the factors of 8 are 4 and 2. 2 is prime, so 2 is done, but 4 is still factorable, so let's break it apart. And that's 2 times 2. Now let's take all of these prime factors and put them under the same radical. So 2 times 2 times 2. And because we're taking the square roots, we need to look for a pair of identical numbers. We have a pair of identical numbers, and that's 2 and 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So it's 2 radical 2. So the square root of 8 is equivalent to 2 radical 2. So we're going to take the radical 8 from earlier and replace it with 2 radical 2. So that's x equals 8 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 4. And notice how 8, 2, and 4 are all divisible by 2. So let's divide all of them by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. We're not going to simplify the radical 2 because it's not a whole number. Over 4 divided by 2 is 2. So our solutions are x equals 4 plus 1 radical 2 is just radical 2 over 2. And x equals 4 minus radical 2 over 2. And those are our solutions.